Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. Today I wanted to talk to you about the August issue of White Dwarf magazine. Here it is, with its full page subscriber artwork, because good loyalist that I am, I subscribe so my magazine comes in the post. I think it hits retail next week. It's got lots of good stuff in it, as always. It's White Dwarf magazine, it's got painting guides and battle reports and things like that. But of particular interest to me, it includes some new rules for Blackstone Fortress, and anyone who follows the channel will know that I am a big fan of Blackstone Fortress. I have purchased all the expansions for it, and I have done previous videos on White Dwarf magazines that have contained new content for it. And in fact, this is something that Games Workshop have done quite a bit with Blackstone Fortress. I think this is the fourth magazine now that has had some new Blackstone Fortress content in it. So, very quick video, take a look at it and see what it adds to the game, and then you can decide whether it's worth you purchasing this magazine if you don't already subscribe. Let's have a look. So here it is. It's Precipice Awaits. It's 4 pages, so it's not gonna change your life, but it's nice to have, I think. And obviously, it's 4 pages, but 1.5 pages is just this cool piece of artwork, which has got some of our heroes having a conflab about something, probably figuring out what they're going to do next. So Blackstone Fortress, one of the cool things about it for me is the setup, the narrative structure of it, in that the Blackstone Fortress is floating around in space and it's luring all these different travelers and adventurers in, and they've set up this base in deep space called Precipice, which it's like a conglomeration of lots of different ships, and heroes turn up and they dock at Precipice. They launch their missions. If they die and never come back, eventually their ship actually becomes part of Precipice. It gets added in, so Precipice is always getting bigger, but it's also getting more unwieldy, and it's all weird structures that have just been fused together over time. It's almost like a living Space Hulk. So that's a really cool concept. And normally, when you finish an expedition in Blackstone Fortress, you go back to Precipice, but you don't really interact with Precipice itself. You interact with the ships that are docked at it. You can go to different ships and you can purchase resources from there. These new rules give you the option to go into Precipice itself rather than going to one of the spaceships. So you have to make that decision. It's like, do I want to go shopping at one of the space stations to get the items that are there? Or do I want to go into Precipice and have a little mini adventure? And if you decide to go into Precipice, there's 4 different locations you can choose to go to. They will have different things that can happen there, and result in persistent effects. You might get wounded, in which case you have to carry that wound over to your next expedition. You might get inspiration points, extra archaeotech, things like that. So there's lots of different things that can happen, and yes, you can actually straight up die if things don't go your way. There's bad things can happen, although there is a certain amount of mitigation involved. And anybody who has played Warhammer Quest Shadows over Hammerhal will recognise that this is very similar to the city phase in that game, where you come out of your dungeon, you have a choice of where you want to go to, you go there, you perform some actions, and then usually roll on a table. And like I say, there are 4 different locations described in this magazine. Not as many as I would have liked. It's a fun little tweak to the rules, but it's not adding a huge amount to it. If this is the only thing you're interested in, I'm not necessarily sure that purchasing the magazine is worthwhile just for these extra rules, but they're very cool, and if you're getting the magazine anyway, they are a very nice little addition to the game, because they're not really adding much in the way of the overall narrative. They're not revealing any more secrets of the Blackstone Fortress or anything like that, but what they are doing is they're enriching the world a little bit more. You get to learn a little bit more about what Precipice is all about, what sort of things go on there, what you can do when you're walking around the space station. So, and like I say, one of my favourite things about Blackstone Fortress is it's just such a cool theme, and it's such a cool idea that you're out at this space station launching expeditions into this ruined Blackstone Fortress, dead monolithic structure. So yeah, it's nice to have a way to enrich that story a little bit more, and this does do that. I think they could have done more. I think they could have done more locations, maybe had some kind of narrative woven into it a little bit, some kind of way to activate sub-quests and things like that. Anybody who remembers the Shadows over Hammerhal content that was in White Dwarf magazine, there was a very cool thing they did there where you could go to, they introduced new city locations, and when you went to those locations you could actually undertake new side quests, and then you went off on a side quest that was actually published in the magazine before going back to your main quest. That's certainly something I think that they can introduce here as like a way, like maybe doing it in exchange for money or clues or archaeotech or something. There's lots more scope than what you get in this magazine is what I'm trying to say. But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn over, I'm going to very quickly show you the 4 different locations. If you don't want to see the 4 locations, it's not a spoiler as such, because when you visit the location, you probably want to see what potential options are before you go there anyway. But if you want to go in blind the first time, and then roll your dice and see what happens, now would be a good time for you to duck out of the video, because I'm going to take a quick look at each location now. So the first one we have is the Shadows. The Shadows is basically all those dark corners of Precipice where people who have been on expeditions have come back and they've lost their grip on reality, and they wander through the deserted areas of Precipice, raving maniacally about the things they have seen. And you have the option to go and talk to some of these people, and depending on their attitude, either good or bad things will happen. There is an option that you will straight up get murdered in the dark. Someone will go nuts and they will stab you to death, which is not nice. There's options to be mugged. There's options to be mugged, but you actually fend off the attackers. But then you can also find rare items. You can draw 3 discovery cards, returning 2 of them and keeping 1, or you can actually draw 2 discovery cards if you roll a 20. You get that natural 20. You will only die straight out if you roll a 1, and there is a way to mitigate that because certain characters do get to re-roll. Janus, UR025, Daek Grek and Pius Vaughan all have the opportunity to re-roll the dice. So I would very much suggest you don't send anybody other than those characters into the Shadows unless, well, especially if you're like me and you like rolling 1s a lot, it's not a good place to go. The second location is the Helmsman, which is a tavern, and it does all the tavern-y things that you would expect. You can go there, you can unfortunately get really, really drunk and killed while you're worse for wear. You can get into a bar fight, you can get swindled by some grifters, you can make shady deals, you can get into a duel, and if you win, then you get benefits. And you can also work out a little agreement with other people that actually gains you clue cards, from the discovery deck. Obviously, worth noting in those cases that when the reward is clues, you want to be in a situation where you're in an adventure that actually requires clues. If you're doing an adventure where you're not trying to collect clues, a lot of the good things that can happen to you at the Helmsman are irrelevant. It's been tied specifically to missions that require clues. As with the Shadows, certain characters do get to do rerolls. Janus again gets to do rerolls because Janus is just overpowered crazy. Thaddeus gets to do rerolls, Espern does, and so does Amelin's Shadow Guide. So that's the situation there. The third location is the trading post. This is interesting because rather than going to a ship and trading with the ship directly, you kind of go to a black market. And what you do is you pick any 3 spacecraft you like, draw 1 card from each set in the spaceships, and then you can purchase one of those cards for 2 less than the face value, so you get a good deal on it. However, afterwards, you have to roll the dice, and if you roll badly, then you end up buying a cheap knockoff fake that's no good and you have to waste it. If you get a middling roll, it's just a regular item, and if you roll well, it's a good item that actually lets you use it an extra time. So if it would normally be discarded or exhausted, it isn't the first time that you use it, so you get an extra use out of it, which is really good. But obviously there is that risk that you end up buying junk. As before, there are certain characters that can do rerolls. Janus, funnily enough, can get a reroll, and so can Rain and Rouse, the wee fellas. And finally, we have a gambling den, where you can go and you can get involved in some gambling in order to win Archaeotech, basically. And the way it works at the gambling den is you have to put in a stake, and that's up to 3 Archaeotech cards, and then you roll the dice. If you roll a 1, you get caught cheating, and you have to make an agility roll, and if you fail the agility roll, you die. You just get straight up killed. But then other results, it ranges from you either have really bad luck and you have to discard your entire stake. You have moderate luck, in which case you have to discard 1 of your Archaeotech cards randomly that you had in your stake. You can break even, where you draw cards equal to your stake, and then you get to keep as many as you put into your stake, any combination thereof, so you can actually use it to get rid of rubbish Archaeotech and get better Archaeotech in return. You can be up on your luck, where you get to add an extra Archaeotech to your hand, or you can do really well and you can actually win a number of Archaeotech cards equal to your stake. So it's a really good way to actually get lots of extra Archaeotech cards, but there is some risk there, and unlike in the other locations, no one gets rerolls at the gambling den. I thought there might have been some way that you might be able to mitigate the roll a little bit more, but that's not the case. It's just a straight up dice roll and then see what happens. So those are the 4 locations: the Shadows, the Helmsman, the Trading Post, and the Gambling Den. Like I say, it adds some interest. It adds some new information about what Precipice is all about. But it's not adding a huge amount. It's a fun little diversion, but it's not going to dramatically change the game. It's not going to completely revolutionize the way you play. So if you don't have this, I don't think it's something that you'll feel like you're missing out on. But if you can get it, or you get this magazine anyway, I think is a very nice little addition. But there we go. That is it. That is the new Precipice rules from White Dwarf magazine from the August 2019 issue. As always, please leave your comments and queries below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye.